Was that cute? I thought it was cute. Thought it was fun. So this took way longer than I expected it to. I finished this book about 2 weeks ago and immediately picked up another book called Martyr and finished that one today. And so I have a bunch of free time right now because I'm not reading. So I'm going to talk about Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman.
And we're very honored and lucky to have the author of Between Two Fires visiting us today, Christopher Buehlman.
I picked up Between Two Fires after throwing it into my want to reads after having it recommended to me. And it was described as the Book of Revelation meets medieval fantasy. Badass, I know. So I dove into it directly after finishing The Fellowship of the Ring, which I just talked about. I'm going to talk about this book as much and as little as I can because I don't want to spoil it, and it is a highly recommended book by me. So if this book review ends up being a bit hollow, just know you should read the book. So Between Two Fires is the sophomore novel for author Christopher Buehlman. This book grabbed me so aggressively. Let me give you a rundown. The story of Between Two Fires follows a disgraced knight and a mysterious girl as they try to navigate through France during the Black Plague. At the same time, Lucifer and his army of devils, fallen angels, whatever you will call them, are waging war against heaven. I myself am not specifically religious, but I did grow up in the Christian faith and am very familiar with the End of Times Book of Revelation. But for those of you who may not be, I'm going to give you a synopsis. In the Bible, the final book of the Bible is the Book of Revelation. It is an apocalyptic story that describes prophetic visions about the end of the world given to a guy named John, also including the divine judgment and the ultimate triumph of God over Satan. The book is highly symbolic and is also given up to many interpretations. I specifically did a form of Bible quizzing when I was in high school, and we didn't quiz on the Book of Revelation because a lot of it was up to interpretation. This book specifically serves as a warning and encouragement to Christians that eventually God will come back, or Jesus will come back in the form of the second coming, and for things to get better, they need to get worse. For that to happen, many bridges need to be crossed before Jesus returns, and some of those are unfolded in the book. At its core, Between Two Fires is a journey story. It is both physical and spiritual of one. Thomas, as I read it, or now I know by listening to interviews it's Tomas, is a former knight stripped of his honor and becomes the reluctant protector of a young girl who claims to receive visions from heaven. Together they travel through France in the middle of the Black Plague and see unspeakable things and horrors, forces both human and supernatural. Buehlman masterfully presents medieval history and horror in this aspect in a setting that feels both authentic and terrifying. I often found myself a lot of the times with my heart racing, getting a light sweat, being very swallowed and involved in the book, and the book raised a lot of theological questions. Does God still watch over humanity? Why does suffering exist? But while it presented these questions, it also explored Tomas's redemption arc. The book itself kind of suggests a liminal space caught between divine salvation and eternal damnation, which I kind of interpreted as Between Two Fires, which we later learned the reason it's named that, but I thought that was kind of cute. Buehlman's prose is both rich and easy to follow, immersing the reader, and especially me, in a world of decay and despair, and making me feel like I was actually there and worried about the same things that the characters were worried about. His descriptions of the plague and the suffering and the intensity of it make it almost palpable. The dialogue, and particularly Thomas's gruff sarcasm, is that of an old dog, and it really contrasts well with the young girl's innocence. It's very comedic in the beginning and very, very engaging. The horror elements of this book are very unsettling. I want to stress that too. It's very eerie. I would describe it as that, eerie. And it's not just because of the supernatural effects, but a lot of the horror that I had was just the actual plague. The brutality of that era really heightens the feeling while reading this book, knowing that this was all things that people actually experienced. These were horrors that people had to get through for us to be where we are today. Tomas is also a deeply flawed but very compelling protagonist. I want to stress that. He's definitely haunted by his past and initially very selfish, but that gradual increase to being selfless over the time is very believable and toward the end kind of heartbreaking. The girl, on the other hand, and I'm not going to say her name because you find that out 15 to 20% into the book, and it's really cool. She's very innocent and creates this almost lamb that you really want to protect. Even as the reader, your heart goes out to her. and her presence is undeniably powerful, as you'll see. The supporting cast, too, is both full of human flaws and grace, showing humanity's high and its lows. I found myself thinking about this book days after, and even now, it was not hard to convey my thoughts and opinions on this book, and I'm reading off of a screen because I wrote an article about it. While its bleak tone and graphic detail might not be for everybody, those who are into literary horror and philosophical depth will find a lot to admire here. Buehlman delivers a haunting tale of faith, redemption, and horrors of the world that were seemingly abandoned by God, making this a standout in both historical and dark fantasy genres. So I'm going to have to rate this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed reviewing this book, and I'm glad you guys watched it. I'm not sure if I'd do anything more like this, but this book stayed with me so much, and I can't recommend it enough that I just had to talk about it. So thank you guys for watching.